The middle rounds of your draft are very important. Sure, the first 4 rounds, you take some good values, you take some guys that you're investing a lot in, and you need some of them, most of them, hopefully all of them if you're following the advice, to pan out. But 48 to 96, those are also going to be important selections. Rounds 5 all the way up through rounds 8. That's what we're talking about today. Guys to avoid, guys to target, the best middle round advice for your redraft league. Let's talk about it. All right, so getting into things, starting at our ADP of around 48, there's going to be some guys that are still going to potentially be available falling with ADPs less than 48. Target guys like Mike Evans. Target guys that are some of the up-and-coming rookies. These guys are actually past ADP of 48, Ted McMillan and Travis Hunter. But if MHJ and Mike Evans fall to you, I think both of them are great picks because they're going to be the wide receiver ones in their offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. going into year 2, I think he can't be much worse. And don't forget, Marvin Harrison Jr. was the best wide receiver prospect of all time. Ted McMillan and Travis Hunter, both of these guys are very, very good selections at around this range. They have an ADP of 55 for Ted McMillan and 58 for Travis Hunter. If either of these guys has a comparable season to rookie Jamar Chase, rookie Justin Jefferson seasons, they can crush their current ADP. So if you can get these guys in round 5 of your draft, would highly recommend pulling the trigger. Now, something to keep in mind, you want to have a balanced approach regardless of where you're drafting from. You know, if you go heavy on running backs in the first 4 rounds, you're going to want to avoid running backs and probably look at some quarterbacks in the later rounds. We'll talk about that in round 7, round 8, where we have a tier of quarterbacks of Kyler, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix. Those are guys we're going to be looking for in round 7 and 8. But you're going to want to be targeting wide receivers if you go RB heavy. If you go wide receiver heavy, you want to be targeting, obviously the other position. So guys that I don't like, it's running backs, man. It's Joe Mixon. No thanks. They bring in Nick Chubb. They have a running back that they just invested in quite heavily, and I feel like nobody's really talking about that. So if we look at Joe Mixon, looking at how Joe Mixon looks from a 2024 perspective, it's actually going to look decent, but let me tell you it wasn't. So 17.2 PPR points per game, finishes at the RB9. You see a lot of green. That's great. If we look at weeks 8 to 18, don't forget he was injured, but you can see it comes down to 15.2 PPR points per game in the RB16, and there's a lot more yellow there. So the receiving role, only 23 receiving yards every single game. They invest in Woody Marks. Woody Marks, they trade a 3rd round pick to go and get this guy. Now, this was a running back heavy draft class. Guys that, and they took him with a round 4 pick, but guys that were getting drafted in round 4 might have been a round 3 pick in different years where the running backs, obviously wasn't as deep of a class. But I think Woody Marks could have a receiving role definitely on 3rd down, taking away some of Joe Mixon's upside. And they bring in Nick Chubb, which could also cap some of Mixon's upside in their red zone if they use Chubb as a red zone back. Joe Mixon has an ADP that it is a bit too steep for my liking at an ADP of 51. I also don't really love Kenneth Walker, that ADP, because Kenneth Walker, he could be injured. Kenneth Walker can't really stay healthy. And if we're talking about looking at Zach Charbonnet is an ADP near 100. So, you can't be betting on Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker at the same time. You kind of have to make your bed and, stick with whatever selection you're going with. Now, Chuba Hubbard is a guy that I do like. Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers, he was pretty solid in 2024. And they didn't really bring in too much competition. They bring in Rico Dowdle. Now, Rico Dowdle is a good sleeper target. They obviously draft Trevor Etienne, who has a decent prospect profile. But Chuba Hubbard, the whole offense funneled through him. 16.1 PPR points per game. And if we think that the Carolina Panthers offense is going to be better, Bryce Young, bounce back season. I'm not convinced Bryce Young's good, but everybody else is. You have Adam Thielen, back from injury. You have Xavier Legette, year 2. And you have, obviously, the guy we just talked about. You have Mr. T-Mac. Not Big Mac, you have T-Mac coming in. So Chuba Hubbard could potentially see more usage in the red zone if they get more opportunities down there in the red zone. So I think Chuba Hubbard is somebody poised to smash. So I like Chuba Hubbard's ADP. Now again, a lot of the guys we've been talking about just now were round 5 targets. Let's start looking past the ADP. We have our first quarterback coming off around an ADP of 75. So we're looking, now we're looking to round 6, round 7 and on. Some round 6 guys that I do not want to see you taking. Round 6, Xavier Worthy, absolutely not. Chris Olave, absolutely please. Now, Chris Olave is 1 concussion away from being doomed. His career could end very, very quick. Now, if Chris Olave is healthy this season, even with the bad quarterback play, I do think Chris Olave, if he's healthy, can probably give you a season averaging 14 plus PPR points per game, even with Tyler Shuff Ruff, who I don't even know this guy's name. That's how bad he is. But I do think that Chris Olave still can smash his current projection. You're getting an alpha. Chris Olave is an alpha. Let's not act like he's going to be the wide receiver 2. Like T. Higgins, don't forget, T. Higgins has an ADP of 30. He's a wide receiver 2 in his offense behind Jamar Chase. Chris Olave is the wide receiver 1 in his offense. Now, I'm not comparing Chris Olave to some of the guys that I'm talking about right now. I think I would rather have T. Higgins in a vacuum, but compared in terms of the value of the ADP, Olave is going 4 rounds past him. So Chris Olave is somebody to be looking at. Wide receiver you want to be avoiding, going right next to Chris Olave, is going to be Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy averaged 11 points in his rookie season. Now, he definitely, as a rookie, he was more involved than he was supposed to be. You had the injuries to Marquise Brown, you had the injuries to Rashee Rice, and you had dusty Travis Kelce. While all of that is true, do you really expect Xavier Worthy to have a great year 2 leap when Marquise Brown is back, when Rashee Rice is back? I don't know why we're acting like, oh, Xavier Worthy, now that everyone's back, is going to be more involved. Xavier Worthy is going to be less involved. And if we're looking at him from a receiving perspective, he wasn't good. Wide receiver 44 finish, 1.3 on the yards per route run, 37 receiving yards per game. It wasn't good. So why are we talking about taking Xavier Worthy here with an ADP of 65? I'd much rather have, this is a good range in, round 6. Now we're in round 6 to look at the rookie running backs. If you're playing catch up at the running back position, or if you already have 2 RBs and you want to secure a third, because running backs and redraft leagues will get pushed up, Travion Henderson. He could be as involved in the receiving game as Alvin Kamara in his rookie year. You have Caleb Johnson. You have Quinshon Judkins. I think any of those rookie running backs could be good value selections here. Now, R.J. Harvey's another one of those rookie running backs. George Pickens is here. Now, George Pickens, from a wide receiver's perspective, is kind of scary because this is similar to T. Higgins, where George Pickens, he's going to, Pickens hasn't necessarily had the best seasons, but he hasn't had the best quarterbacks. The main reason I actually like Pickens in round 6 is because of Las Vegas. Who knows more, us or the people that are, the people running the sports books that are going to lose or gain money based on the projections they're putting out? They're projecting George Pickens to have just under 1,000 receiving yards. So his over-under for receiving totals is like 950 receiving yards this season. If that's true, taking George Pickens here in round 6, round 7 is going to be a wide receiver that returns pretty good value. He's attached to Prescott. Prescott's had QB3, QB7 season finishes when healthy. So George Pickens could be somebody that smashes. Another wide receiver that can completely break fantasy, one of my favorite middle round selections, is Chris Godwin. Guys, Chris Godwin in 2024, this might break your brain. 19.7 PPR points per game. He was the wide receiver 2. When healthy, Chris Godwin was a man on a mission. Now he's coming off of that injury, which is a bit concerning, but I don't care. You're getting him in round 7, guys. It's just such a good value, and you could potentially stack him, because if we're looking at quarterbacks now, if we look at the quarterback market, quarterbacks start coming off the board around an ADP of 90. Some guys coming off the board that I like. You have Kyler Murray, probably my favorite quarterback in that tier, because Kyler Murray hasn't really finished below QB12 in his career, and he's currently priced in as QB12. So I feel like Kyler is actually priced at his floor. Now we have Bo Nix. We have Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield just had the most passing touchdowns of his career. So you have to be relying on Baker to have a bunch of passing touchdowns. If we see any touchdown regression with Baker Mayfield, that could definitely hurt him. Mahomes, I haven't been taking as much, but Mahomes does seem like a decent pick. Somebody I do like a lot is Justin Fields. Now, there's Justin Fields you can probably get falling into the late rounds. I'm sure we'll talk about him in that video. But this is the tier of quarterbacks that I do like in the middle of the rounds. Kyler Murray, you can see, was the QB12 in 2024, and he had a bad year. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. going into year 2. You have Trey McBride. He only had 2 touchdowns, probably the worst touchdown luck of all time in 2024. If McBride has more touchdowns, which people are betting on taking him around ADP of 20 or a little bit after that, then Kyler Murray's going to be the one throwing those touchdowns, right? So if Kyler has to pass the ball a bit more, then Kyler Murray could crush. Bo Nix, I like Bo Nix because Bo Nix in the first half of the year was not that good. And if we look at the second half specifically of Bo Nix this season, I'm going to try filtering this down from weeks 9 to 18. Again, as always, thanks to Mason Dodd from Flock Fantasy. You guys can check this out for free. Let me use this. 21 PPR points per game, QB6 through the second half of the season for Bo Nix, 250 passing yards a game. Everything looks pretty dang good. His rushing attempts was 4.4 per game, about 20 rushing yards. So Bo Nix does have a bit of a floor, considering he averaged about 20 rushing yards every single game. If we expect the Broncos offense to be a bit better, then Bo Nix could be somebody that crushes. Baker Mayfield, a lot of passing touchdowns, man. A lot of passing touchdowns. If we see any regression in that aspect, it's a bit scary. But they do bring in Igbuka. So now Jalen McMillan, the guy that had 8 touchdowns, is the wide receiver 4. The Buccaneers, they're still going to air the ball out. So Baker Mayfield could totally crush. Now, you might think that his rushing upside is limited. In 2024, he had 22 rushing yards per game, which is pretty good. Compared to all the other seasons he's played, he averaged like 3 rushing yards per game per season. So he had a lot more rushing upside in 2024. I think we could see regression in that aspect, back to 4 or 5 rushing yards per game for Baker, but what do I know? Justin Fields, I like him because he had 75 rushing yards per game in Chicago in the second season in his career. So the rushing upside with Justin Fields is insane. But Vegas is projecting him at 14 touchdowns on the year, over under passing touchdowns, and 2,500 passing yards on the year, over under, which is the worst stats I've ever seen. But Garrett Wilson is a round 2, round 3 pick. I actually don't like Garrett Wilson for that reason because of Fields' Las Vegas projections. But I think Justin Fields could be somebody that gives you QB7 or higher upside as your quarterback position. Looking at some of the guys towards the second half, we're looking at round 7, round 8 now. Jacoby Myers is a pretty safe pick. He has an ADP of 87. The tight ends, I'm avoiding David Njoku. I'm avoiding Travis Kelce. Njoku, I actually like. I think Njoku's a good athlete. They bring in Fannin, which I think Fannin could kind of limit Njoku's upside because they are saying, we'll do more 2 tight end sets. We'll have Fannin a bit more involved. But the reason I'm avoiding these tight ends specifically is because in the late round video, where I'm doing rounds 8 to 12, we're going to have some insane tight end values. So that's going to be what you're targeting after round 8. A lot of landmines here. Rome Odunze, hate him. Brandon Ayuk, hate him. Debo, hate him. Cooper Kupp, hate him. Which is why I'd much rather be taking quarterback in round 7, 8 than any of the bums right here. Like Stephon Diggs, maybe. It's kind of dusty. Guy that I do like in this range a lot. The last guy we'll talk about in this video is going to be Josh Downs. Josh Downs, he improved in every single category. From 2023 to 2024, yards per out run was 2.3, best of his career. It's only a 65% snap share, 25% target share, which is pretty good, 13 points per game. I think Josh Downs is going to be the alpha in this offense over Pittman this season. Quarterback play, sure, it's a bit concerning. Not as concerning as Jerry Jeudy and the Browns, though, and Jerry Judy's going ahead of him. So I think Josh Downs could have a pretty solid, his third year in the league, I think, right? So Josh Downs, let's take a look. So it'll be his 4th, 1, 2, 3. I guess this will be Josh Downs' 4th year in the league, and I expect him to take another step forward, closer to 14.5, 15 PPR points per game. Those are the ways to handle the middle rounds of your draft. Go ahead, crush it. I expect you to win your draft now. We've done the early round solution. We've done the middle round solution. Now it's time for the late round. Some good value there in the tight ends and some good sleepers. Smash like and subscribe button. Check it out.